Hi, everybody. Well, this is not the special edition we wanted to have of Saints Game Day here on the social media channels for CST. Victor Howell, along with my Super Bowl champ Scott Shanle, coming to you from our respective offices with news that we really weren't expecting to hear. But, Scott, we talked about this last night coming out of the ball game with the win over San Francisco. We knew Drew Brees left the game at halftime. And in his one-on-one interview with Mike Neighbors, you could tell when he was talking that something was just not right. It was more than just, hey, I'm a little banged up. And I remember during the show, I really couldn't find the words. Why don't you share with everybody the news that we're just getting within the last 5 minutes about Drew Brees and why he will at least miss 1 week, if not a lot longer?
Yeah, the news that just broke was he has a couple of fractured ribs actually on both sides and a collapsed lung. I mean, those are some pretty serious medical determinations. And when you look at Drew, it sounds like he went into the game with some rib problems to begin with. He was wearing a flak jacket in pregame warmups, throwing the ball, and that hit just compounded everything. I don't know if the collapsed lung came from that hit, but obviously anybody who saw that hit from the defensive lineman of the 49ers, if you have rib issues, that was just going to exacerbate those issues because you have a 300-pound man landing on you.
Yeah.
And now that's what you get. So I hope that the medical team does right by Drew. He gets the rest he needs, obviously for his safety and his health. He's the ultimate competitor. He always has been. But you have to do what's right. You have to give Jameis or Taysom a chance to take this team over just like Teddy did and let the defense play like they did last year. And hopefully they'll be able to hold down the fort until he gets back.
Yeah, and look, before we even start projecting about other things, we have to step back for a second and realize if he went into that game, he led this team on 2 scoring drives before the half, including a 2-minute drill with injuries. I mean, that hit came. He still, and remember, on the touchdown pass to Kamara, he had to bend over after fumbling the ball, still picked it up, avoided getting hit again, and threw, which certainly speaks to his toughness. But I guess when the adrenaline all calms down, you go into halftime for 15 minutes. Remember, we saw him talking to Sean, and he was grabbing his side, kind of like, look, it's just hurting, and I can't go anymore. Certainly a lot worse than what any of us thought.
Yeah, and I think as a player and as a competitor, I know you can play through injuries until you get a chance to actually sit down and start being human again and thinking, wow, that really hurts. Because when you're in the field of battle and you're out there with your teammates, you don't want to leave the field. And I think that's what happened to Drew, because when I went back to watch that 2-minute drive, he wasn't throwing the ball. He wasn't following through on any of his throws. He was arming it. There weren't any deep throws. So he was definitely in pain. And for him to fight through for his team till halftime, that's Drew. But at the same time, the way he walked off the field after that hit, I've never seen Drew in that much pain. Of all the years I've seen him get hit hard. I've never seen him get up that slowly and walk that gingerly to the sideline. You knew something was wrong as soon as you saw his body language.
So let me ask you this. We talk about this often, and you always talk about Father Time. You knew when it was your time to go after an outstanding career and grabbing a Super Bowl title. We know Tom Brady's in his 40s. We know Drew's in his 40s. He's always talked about or mentioned wanting to play even a couple more years into his 40s. But Father Time catches up, and then when you start getting hit like this, and now you're talking about broken ribs, you're talking about a collapsed lung, they're officially saying he'll miss 1 week. There's got to be a better than good chance, Scott, that he's going to miss a lot longer. That, God forbid, we even start saying he might miss the rest of the season. But how seriously do you have to sit back and say, look at your age, look at the condition of these injuries, beautiful wife, 4 kids? I mean, all of that has to play into this, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely it does. And I think when you look at how long Drew's played, he's been very fortunate with his health. Obviously, you go back to his shoulder injury that in San Diego that allowed him to become a New Orleans Saint. He has been very healthy. And when you get towards the end of your career, it was a week ago. Heck, Victor, we sat in the office and I said, Drew needs to play another year the way he's playing. Yeah. When you start getting hit like that, it changes your perspective. It changes things. And this is a very dangerous situation with a collapsed lung and you have fractured ribs. This comes down to your life, your livelihood after football. And I think where Drew is, when you start to get towards the end of this year, he's going to trust his team to win games. But there's a much bigger picture outside of football when you talk about the injury that he sustained.
Who's the biggest voice that has to get to Drew? Because we know, as you mentioned, he's the ultimate competitor, whether it's on the football field, quarterback drills during training camp, playing ping pong in the locker room, shooting baskets, whatever. We know how competitive it is. Does it have to be Sean Payton? Does it have to be Mickey Loomis? Does it have to be Gail Benson? Does it have to be his wife? Who's got to be the voice that can impact the competitive spirit that's inside of Drew to say, now look, I know you want to, but there's a difference between wanting to and being able to, or is there any of these voices that can get to him?
I was just going to say, I think it's Brittany Breeze. I think when the wife steps in and the kids, Drew's going to go home and see his kids. And you have to realize when you have a collapsed lung and fractured ribs, bad things can happen. You can get a punctured lung. You can end up in a hospital with something very serious. So I think you step away from being the football player and the competitor, and you see your family at home, I think that will help him make the wise decision, and he'll make the smart decision. And I think he's going to trust his teammates to hold the fort down while he's out. And I think we haven't seen the last of number 9. I don't know that, but he will trust his defense to play the way they're playing. He will trust Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill with a full week of practice to perform just like Teddy Bridgewater did. And heck, Victor, we talked about it. They have the MVP of the league on the team in 41. He will pick up the slack as well.
Yeah, no doubt. We certainly wish Drew the best. Obviously, this is much different than just injuring a thumb, and we certainly hope Drew gets the rest he needs and can heal very well. But fact of the matter is the season continues. You have 7 more games. So Jameis Winston plays the second half against the 49ers. As we know, it was not a very offensively beautiful showcase really by either team, but he did enough to lead him to one more touchdown and get the win. And then, of course, we've seen Taysom Hill. Usually we see him, Scott, as more of a not necessarily a trick play, but just kind of maybe mess up the rhythm a little bit, speed something up, wildcat. We've seen him throw a couple times. Do you see Taysom as being the guy to step in, or do you see Jameis Winston stepping in and maybe seeing some more of Taysom kind of alternating with Jameis as we did with Taysom and, say, Drew?
Yeah, my guess would be that Jameis Winston is the true backup quarterback. He would take over much like Teddy Bridgewater, but you're going to see more splash plays with Taysom Hill. You know, right now it's been a handful because you have Drew Brees on the field. He comes in 5, 6, 7 plays. I think you could see 10 to 15 plays of Taysom Hill on that role with Drew out. But we looked at last week's game and we all got a glimpse of what life is like without number 9 in there. And the offense isn't near as pretty. We can all agree to that. Even last year when Teddy was playing well, it's just not the same. This guy's the most accurate quarterback in NFL history. It's not going to look the same. But they will find a way. The defense, I think, is good enough to win games. The schedule is set up for them to win games. 41, like Alvin Kamara is still doing his thing, but let's judge these quarterbacks after they get a week or 2 of all the reps in practice.
Right. Right. And that's something you and Deuce talked about. And Deuce really hit on it last night on Saints Tonight following the Niners game about how you got to give Jameis a break. He had no offseason training with his team, no way of really getting into the Sean Payton playbook. And even during the season, he's not running with the one. So all of a sudden you throw him in. So this will give him that full week. Last thing, Scott, as we talk about this, and again, we're discussing the fact that the news comes out, Drew Brees, broken ribs, also a collapsed lung, will not be playing this week against Atlanta. You know, we looked at Matt Ryan's numbers at the end of our program Sunday night, Scott, and we talked about how well he's playing. It hasn't been his fault that the Falcons have been as bad as they are. So if he's going to come in and try to air it out, how much, if you're Jameis Winston and the Saints, how much do you not try to go tit for tat with a guy who can chunk it all over the dome and realize, all right, we've got our backup in, but as you mentioned, we've got 41. Let's change a little bit of our approach and not try to challenge a guy who we know can throw it 50, 60 yards down the field.
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do. Because this Atlanta Falcons team, it would have been a game had number 9 had Drew been there. They're playing better football than they were playing early in the year. So at this point, you look at your strengths of the team. You have 2 really good backs. You have a good offensive line. You may not be able to throw the ball 30 to 40 times like you want to, but grind the ball out, move the chains, let your defense. As Saints fans, we should all be thankful that the defense has shown up recently, especially last week. They're playing great defense, no explosive plays, ball going over their head. They're playing great run defense and have been for 3 years. That is going to be the winning formula down the stretch. Great defense, run the ball, and don't turn the ball over.
Well, as you can imagine, we're going to have lots to talk about Sunday morning on Saints Game Day as we get you ready. Scott, I appreciate you jumping on with all this breaking news. Again, folks, we invite you to join us all weekend long. We have LSU and Arkansas Saturday morning with our pregame show. Scott and I will be on the air Saturday night at 10 o'clock to recap the college football scene, and then join us Sunday morning at 10:30. You know we will have a lot to talk about on Saints Game Day, getting you ready for the black and gold against the Falcons there at the Superdome. Scott, safe travels. Thanks for jumping on here, and we'll see you this weekend to talk more football on CST.
Absolutely. Sounds great.